What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Since we've already gone and ranked all of the assault and medic primary weapons, today we're going to move on to the 14 support class LMGs and carbines. To be transparent with you, the support class is easily my least favourite of the 4 infantry classes in Battlefield 1. Personally, I feel like the weapons are a bit too bulky, slow, and inaccurate for the way I personally like to play first-person shooters, and they actively encourage players to camp 500 meters away from any combat and just pick people off around flags. However, there are still some very, very good weapons available to the class, and quite paradoxically, my favourite weapon in the entire game is actually only available to the support class. Before we get going, once again, this video is completely unscripted, with just my raw thoughts on each weapon, alongside a few stats that I do have memorized. All of the rankings are based purely upon my own opinion, so feel free to disagree and bash me down in the comment section below. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Alright, so starting us off in the E tier, I've actually got what I believe to be the 2 worst weapons in the entire game. These things absolutely are atrocious. The first is the Piper M1893. Now, I think the best way to demonstrate why the Piper sucks is to list all the things it's bad at and all the things it's good at. What is the Piper bad at? It has pretty awful range performance, terrible bullet velocity, pretty severe damage drop-off, that's the same as range performance, Seb. Only holds 6 rounds in the magazine, is incredibly inaccurate, has some awful bloom. ADSs fairly slowly considering the size of the weapon. Its recoil is terrible, like it jumps like crazy considering it's firing pistol caliber ammunition. And oh yeah, it's firing pistol caliber ammunition. Now in terms of the good things, you can argue it's got a pretty decent reload speed, and it is a 3-shot kill at best. However, the fire rate is so slow, the weapon is so inaccurate, and the recoil is so atrocious. Good luck getting the 3-shot kill to work. As it is, like, it drops out of 3-shot kill range past, I think, like 12 meters. So basically you have to be in SMG-08 automatico distance to even contemplate killing someone with this thing. It's just... using the Piper is a rough existence. It is painful. I do not recommend it to anyone if you wish to retain your sanity. The second weapon in this tier is, technically it's a group of weapons. I've just grouped them all together because I can't be bothered talking about each and every one of them singularly. It's going to be the pistol carbines. Now, you'd think the pistol carbines wouldn't be too bad, right? Because they're pistols. The pistols are decent. They can compete, sorta, and you put them in a carbine frame. Surely there's some advantages to that, right? Nah, not really. They're just pistols. That's really it. You can argue that the PO8 artillery, for example, has a bump to magazine capacity, but in a game like Battlefield 1, where even the pistols in general aren't actually the best secondary weapons, that they're outpaced by the Obres and all the other revolvers by far. Why would you want a not even best-in-class secondary as your primary weapon? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. They have terrible damage drop-off performance. They're firing pistol caliber ammunition, so it's a 4-shot kill even at best. Sure, their fire rates aren't that bad, but once again, it's a pistol. You're meant to only rely on this in the worst of scenarios when you're out of bullets in your primary, and you're actively, in these things' best damage range, you're actively competing with every single assault weapon, which is better than this thing at its ideal range. Like, I would take the RSC SMG over both of these things any day of the week. And you guys know how I feel about the RSC SMG. Like, that thing could be annihilated from existence, and I would probably sleep better. Do I think the pistol carbines are worse than the Piper? No. The Piper is... the Piper's atrocious. The Piper, honestly, is outperformed by most pistols. But the pistol carbines still suck. They're still terrible. I don't care what you have to say. Simple as that. Alright, in D tier now, I have two weapons. The first is the M1909 M.I.M.E. Now, this weapon was actually my most used weapon back when the game first came out and I was playing on console. The M.I.M.E. was the first weapon I received a service star on, and I think I have like 7 service stars on this thing back on PS4. Does that mean the thing's good though? No, not at all. I was just really bad back then. That's really all it comes down to. The M.I.M.E. basically is trying to impersonate what the bigger LMGs are, just it has small dick energy. That's probably the best way I can put it. Because essentially, the weapon is designed to be a mid to long range weapon utilizing the bipod. However, then it's got the very small magazine of 30 rounds that gives you a quick reload. Like, sure, you can argue that's pretty good, but if the ideal scenario for this weapon to work is you proning 500 meters away from combat and picking people off around an objective, personally, I would much rather have a bigger magazine capacity than be able to reload quicker, because if you're proning and sitting still, the second a scout player sees you and spots you, you now have every single scout player on the map looking at you. I would much prefer something with a bigger magazine so that way I can actively suppress all of these people so they don't kill me, rather than suppressing one guy, then having to reload and getting dinked by sniper number 2. At least with things like the Lewis gun, the M1917, god I hate that thing, the Perino, they've got so much ammo in the mag, when you're prone all the way at the back of the map, you're actively suppressing them all, and they can't hit you while suppression is on, because suppression is the most oppressive mechanic ever created and is fucking awful. That's a conversation for another day. But overall, I just think the M.I.M.E. is outclassed by everything, and like all other LMGs, it is so inaccurate when it's not bipoded that it kind of just defeats the purpose of existing. Sure, you can still slay out the thing, you can still do fairly decently, like I've got some pretty high kill games with it, but would I take it over anything above it? God no, not even remotely. The other weapon in this tier is the Perino model 1908. Now, the Perino gets points because its legendary skin is gorgeous. Like, it is probably, I think in my opinion, the only legendary skin that rivals it is the Kerensky from the Fedorov, but I am a bit biased in that instance. Once again, the Perino sort of falls under the same issues as the M1909, but rather than not having enough ammo, its sights are kind of bad. It's got pretty obstructive sights, whether you use the defensive, I think the variant is called, or the low weight. On top of that, it's also part of the lower damage profile LMGs, because technically there are 3 damage profile LMGs, right? You have the Shoshat, the high damaging profile LMGs, and the low damage profile LMGs. The Perino is part of the low damage profile. On top of that, this thing fires the slowest, I believe, out of all of the low damage profile LMGs. So essentially, it has the worst DPS output of all of the LMGs. It's really, really painful to use sometimes, because when you're bipoded, you can't see Jibby Jesus because you're so far away from things and the iron sights are so obstructive. and then you can't use it aggressively because its time to kill is awful, its accuracy is terrible when you're not bipoded and you're moving. And like all LMGs, when you first start shooting, which is the most important part of the engagement, mind you, you're incredibly inaccurate, and it gains accuracy over time. So, if the weapon is inaccurate, does no damage, fires incredibly slowly, you're gonna die 9 times out of 10 if you're not bipoded and have already let off at least 5-6 rounds. Yeah, the Perino's pretty awful, but hey, it's pretty, and that gives it points. In the C tier now, the first of the 3 I have as the average weapons is actually the Hewitt Automatic. Now, for the longest time, the Hewitt Automatic was regarded as the worst weapon in Battlefield 1. People hated this thing, especially as the level 10 support reward. Yeah, it was incredibly underwhelming. However, I don't know if the weapon got buffed. I think it may have received adjustments to maybe its damage or its bullet velocity. I can't really remember. But in my opinion, the Hewitt Automatic is the most accurate LMG. It is incredibly accurate whether you have it bipoded or non-bipoded. Its bloom seems significantly less than things like the Perino and the M.I.M.E that we've discussed already. On top of that, sure, it only has 26 rounds in its magazine, but it reloads that magazine fairly quickly and behaves more like the Madsen, the Bar, and the Burton, which I tend to lean towards more calling assault rifles than actual LMGs when you compare the way they perform and feel in your hands in game. It's not quite at their level of maneuverability, but it's closer to that than it is the bulkiness of the goddamn Perino. So, I actually quite like the Hewitt. Is it gonna get you blazing fast TTK kills? No, but it's going to... If you want an LMG that the bullets are going to land where you're aiming 9 times out of 10, no matter if you're bipoded or if you're running around, the Hewitt is probably the closest thing you're gonna get to that. Second on this list is the Lewis gun. Now, in my medic ranking video, I mistakenly forgot that the Lewis gun was the starting weapon for the support class, which was kind of bad because I like the Lewis gun. Not because the weapon's good, it basically does everything you'd expect from an LMG at an average level, but because, like every interpretation of the Lewis gun in the first-person shooter genre, it always has a gold skin that looks really cool. I'm being really superficial right now, but this shows how much I play the support class. Yeah, there's not really much you can say about the Lewis gun. It's got... I think it's part of the higher damage profile LMGs, has 47 rounds, which you can bump up to 97 with the suppressive variant. Fires reasonably fast at around 540 rounds per minute. It's fairly accurate. You can be a bit more aggressive with it thanks to the low weight variant, giving it accuracy gains quicker, but there's just not really anything special about the way the Lewis performs. Is it a good starting weapon? Yeah, it's fairly decent, does everything you'd want, but it just does everything you want, but doesn't do anything spectacularly, or even above averagely. So, the Lewis gun is the living definition of she's kind of mid, bro. There's nothing else I can really say about it. The final weapon I have in C tier is actually going to be the Madsen MG. Now, as I stated before, I regard the Madsen, the Bar, and the Burton as performing more like assault rifles in-game than as LMGs. Sure, they still have the LMG characteristics, and I think they still suffer from the same bloom mechanics that the LMGs do, but not nearly as bad. And the Madsen is basically the same as the Bar, in my experience, except the Bar has a slightly higher fire rate, whereas the Madsen is a bit more accurate. That's really the only statistical difference I can think of between the two weapons. Other than that, they're basically the same thing. The reason I put the M.I.M.E below the bar... below the bar. I didn't even catch that one. That was unintentional. The reason the M.I.M.E is below the bar is simply because of the magazine, and it's so obstructive. Sure, this is the common criticism. Everyone says this of the weapon. Cole, you're not being revolutionary with this. But it's a fair criticism. When you're ADS, you can't see anything on your right side of your screen. And I've gotten killed quite a lot because someone is sitting where the magazine is on my screen and I just can't see them. I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's gonna be in C tier. The weapon's still good. I still like it. It's just... it's not as good as the Burton or the bar. There. That's why it's there. Moving on to B tier. Wow, it's the bar. The M1918. Now, as I stated before, the bar is basically the same as the M.I.M.E, but it has a higher fire rate. That's really it. It also doesn't have the obstructive magazine, which makes it better as well. You can use it more versatilely. Do I have to say anything else? It's just... yeah, I'm just going to leave it like that, because I don't really know what else to say. I kind of said it all with the M.I.M.E. Moving on! The second weapon of the B tier. We have the Shoshat LMG. Now, as I discussed before, the Shoshat is it's different compared to the rest of the LMGs. When I was talking about the Perino, you heard me talking about damage profiles, and you would have heard that I said we have the Shoshat, the high damage profiles, and the low damage profiles. That's because the Shoshat does more damage per bullet than any other LMG in the class. It does 38 damage per bullet, making it a 3-shot kill up to something like 40-ish meters? I can't quite remember. And even its minimum damage is 28, which is what the max damage of the high damage per bullet LMGs are. However, this is balanced out by the fact that it is the slowest firing fully automatic weapon in Battlefield 1, or at least I believe it is. Now, you'd think this harms its performance. Not really. Its fire rate isn't so bad that it's unusable. It's not like, it's still 200-ish rounds per minute, or maybe 300-ish rounds per minute. I, once again, can't remember. And so, it's usable at close range. Its hipfire performance is actually shockingly good. Like, I can't count the amount of times that I've been saved by this thing hitting 3 straight bullets in hipfire, and I've just been sitting there like, how did that work? On top of that, it's where every single LMG becomes a 5-shot kill, this thing is still remaining a 3 to 4-shot kill, so it takes less bullets to kill someone, which does, while it's not killing them faster, it makes it easier, per se, because the recoil is essentially, like, it's super easy to handle, because you're just handling 1 bullet at a time with this thing, rather than with things like the LMG08 or the Parabellum, you feel like you're handling 10 bullets with each ammo press. Yeah, I don't know. The Shoshat it's very usable at every range, and while it doesn't excel at one thing, in my opinion, it's above average at everything. So and it's also unique enough that you have to give it credit for its uniqueness. So I'm going to leave it here as the second weapon in B tier. Moving on to our third weapon in the B tier, we have the MG15NA. I don't actually know what NA stands for. I know, great Battlefield historian, whoop-de-doo. But all I know is that MG15 is probably the most aggressive LMG we had on our hands at launch, if you're not counting the bar and the M.I.M.E as LMGs and more referring to them as assault rifles, as I like to do in my head. The MG15 has 100 rounds in its magazine for the low weight and Storm variant. I will talk about the Storm variant in a second. And 200 for the suppressive. So, with the suppressive, this thing used to be the weapon with the most ammo. The MG15 has a Storm variant. And if you don't know what Storm variants do, basically the Storm variants have access to a foregrip, which increases aimed accuracy while moving. This is massive for the MG15 because it basically makes it the most accurate, aggressive LMG in the game. Right? Because rather than having to deal with stupid bloom mechanics, the Storm variant cuts it out, really, while you're moving. So rather than having to rely on having a bipod deployed to get rid of this stupid bloom, you just get rid of the stupid bloom all the time. Sure, it's not going to help you with recoil like a bipod would, but it's giving you way more versatility because now you don't have to, every single time you see someone, oh god, there's a person in front of me, let me smash the C button, smash my balls into the floor, prep the weapon, aim, then shoot. No, with this thing you just aim and shoot, and it's going to be accurate. Its fire rate isn't the fastest. It is, I believe it's part of the higher damage profile LMG, so it's doing 28 per bullet. It's a 4 bullet kill. It's just going to perform really well. It's got decent mid-range performance. I wouldn't recommend stretching it out to long range unless you have the suppressive variant or the low weight variant and you're using the bipod. I wouldn't recommend that. The Storm is more meant to be used as a more aggressive to mid-range LMG. But overall, the MG15 is criminally underrated, I believe, at this point in the game. I rarely see people using it. And it's going to be the last weapon I have in the B tier. Alright, moving on to the A tier. Top tier wood smash weapons. The first one we're going to talk about is the Burton LMR. Now, as I was stating before with the Bar and the Madsen, the Burton LMR is the last of the 3 assault rifle-like weapons we have in the support class. This weapon, however, is basically deleting people at close range. This thing performs more like an Annihilator and a Automatico than anything else available to any other class other than the assault class, right? It fires at, I think, 830 rounds per minute, still doing the 28 damage per bullet, and eviscerates things from close range, like deletes them. And with the trench variant, while its hipfire accuracy isn't as tight as the trench submachine guns, this thing is still just, you don't need to aim with it. You do not need to. It is, some of the things you can do with this thing are disgusting. Like, I'm talking, if you have a 5-squad lineup, you are shredding through all of them in the 20-round magazine before they can react because you're firing that quickly. This thing is dirty. It is dirty. On top of that, you got to give it unique points because of its magazines and the fact you can switch to incendiary rounds, which, sure, you're never really, especially at this point in the game with all the ace pilots that I hate, it's very unlikely that you're going to be actually take down a plane with the incendiary rounds, but you will do significant enough damage that they will have to back away before engaging people again for at least a minute or two. So it does give you some respite in that aspect. On top of that, against things like the blimp behemoth, I find it incredibly fun just to sit at the back of the map with this thing. You put your ammo crate down and you just start spamming the incendiary bullets into the thing. It's a great way to farm points. It will take you forever to take down the blimp if you're the only one shooting at it, but it's fun. You do like 40 damage per magazine at the super far ranges, and you're just sitting there farming points constantly and just sitting there laughing maniacally like, ha ha ha, get fucked. It's cool. It's good and it's fun. It's a good balance of the two. The other weapon I have in this tier is the complete polar opposite of my feelings towards the Burton LMR. We have the Browning M1917 MG. This weapon is probably the only weapon I hate more than the SMG 0818. Not because it's mind-numbingly great at destroying everything up close, but because of the way the people that use it. They will sit in their spawn on the hill on maps like Soissons, for example, or Soy Sauce as I like to call it, with their telescopic M1917 MGs and rain down suppression on every single member of the opposing team to the point that using a sniper rifle becomes impossible. Leaving cover becomes a chore. Trying to move between objectives becomes so difficult that I would rather have my balls waxed by a small tiny Frenchman named Penelope. Don't even know where I was going with that one. The amount of ease of use this weapon has and no skill it requires. It is the best weapon when I think about weapons that require you to simply prone 500 meters away and shoot at enemies. When we were talking about M.I.M.E and the Perino earlier, the M1917 MG is what these things dream of being. Because it is so stupidly easy to use. Its bullet velocity is incredibly high. It's got 250 rounds in the magazine. The telescopic variant means you can see everyone, and 3/4 of the time the telescopic stuff doesn't have scope glints. I genuinely don't know if telescopic variants have scope glints. Wish they should, because they say have the same magnification as marksman rifles. I'm on a tangent. I need to calm down. This is raising my blood pressure. I hate the M1917 MG. If you use this thing, you are the least skilled, most sweaty pussy I've ever... But I can't not say the strategy is super viable, because let's be honest, these people are going like 50-1 because they're never having to move. The M1917 MG is A tier. With that depression out of the way, we're now going to go on to my two favourite weapons in this class, one of which is actually my favourite in the game. The first of the two, in our S tier, is going to be the LMG 0818. Now, the LMG 0818 is actually a redesigned version of the MG 0818 that you see with the Sentry kit, you know, like the really big, bulky LMG that can't ADS. Yeah, the LMG 0818 is that, but made more lightweight and for use on planes. This thing's cool. It's pretty freaking cool, man. 100 rounds per minute, has the bipod, has a suppressive variant, if you're into those sort of things. I don't know why you would be, but you might be. And fires at 600 rounds per minute, very controllable recoil, pretty fast TTK, is part of the higher damage profiles LMGs, so there's a 4-shot kill down to a 5-shot kill. Overall, this thing is one of, if not the best, it's not the best, but if not the best aggressive LMG available. On top of that, it still performs really well at mid-range, and if you want to stretch it to the long range, you can because of the bipod. Overall, like, the LMG 0818 has no weaknesses. You can argue that its recoil is a little bit much, but it's not. It's not. If you're saying the LMG 0818 has recoil, you're probably the type of guy that sits at the back of the map with the M1917 MG, and I hate you. I'm sorry, that was uncalled for. No, it was called for. But the LMG 0818 is great. It's really, really freaking good. I recommend using it. However, if you want to be the real Giga Chad, the real Sigma male, the real peak Battlefield 1 gamer, the cream of the crop, you leave the LMG 0818 in the dust, and you use its older brother, the Parabellum MG 1417. Oh my god, this thing is so good. So good. The Parabellum is essentially, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, the SMG 0818 counter. It is an SMG 0818 with 100 rounds in the goddamn magazine. And it has the bipod, so you can stretch yourself out to long range. And on top of that, it has mid-range performance, as it only drops off to a 5-shot kill. It is also part of the high damage profile LMGs, dealing 28 damage per bullet. It is a 4-shot kill at close range. This thing shreds. It is ridiculous. It's balanced out by the fact that it does have a fair amount of recoil. Like, I won't lie to you, the recoil can be off-putting. Particularly to people on console. Like, I feel bad for people on console trying to use this thing, because I imagine that would be a nightmare. However, on PC, bro, just pull down. Pull down left, pull down right, repeat. Easy kills. Easy kills. And at close range, just hip fire the goddamn thing. You have that much ammo, who cares if you fucking miss? You're also firing so quickly that the majority of weapons it's not really going to matter. And you can always tap fire, because it's also got really good bullet velocity. The Parabellum is fucking incredible. I love this thing. In my opinion, it's the best weapon in the game. A lot of people disagree with me, but I don't care. I don't. In my opinion, the thing's more overpowered than the SMG-0818. It's just the SMG-0818 pisses me off more because it's more easy to use because it doesn't have recoil. Thanks for making it to the end of the video, guys. As always, let's get the YouTuber-y stuff out of the way. If you liked the video, make sure to like the video. And if you're new around here and like the content, make sure to subscribe with post notifications turned on, so that way you don't miss out when I drop the final video in this series on the Scout class. We will be ranking all of the primary weapons in the Scout class, and oh my god, I am probably going to get cancelled for my opinion on the Scout class, aren't I? Oh, it's gonna be rough. Anyways, boys, once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.